Yeah, we've been waiting for you.
All right.
I'm really waiting for me.
You're here.
Sure, you're not late.
All right.
All right.
Holly's here, let's go.
Hey, everybody. All right, so we'll start up our meeting. This is a workshop. As everybody knows, workshops are for council to sort out what the heck we're doing on stuff. Let me take a roll. I see the city attorney. I see the council member from Ward 1, the council member from Ward 2, the at-large council member, the other at-large council member, the council member from Ward 3, and the council member from Ward 4. The mayor happens to be here, and as is the city administrator. Anyone online? I don't think we've got anyone online tonight from the city.
Not from the city.
Okay. Hey, Charlotte. Hang out for a while. Okay. So we have a couple. These are mostly boilerplate stuff. So there's a drought emergency plan, and there's a proposed local law or a change in a proposed local law.
It's a proposed local law to amend the existing law to provide some clarification.
Thank you.
Occasionally, we have a list of sort of cleanup documents, matters that we'll bring to you that aren't urgent but do require some cleanup, and tonight's are two examples of those that we want to bring to your attention and put on your agenda. So the first one concerns amending Chapter 24. The city has an existing drought emergency plan. It's set forth in the city code. You've used it in the past. However, the changes we're proposing are merely towards process. The current code requires that the city council declare the drought emergency. And so we thought it was better, allows more efficiency, can be done on a quicker basis if it's done by the mayor upon the advice of the superintendent of water and sewer when the reservoir levels reach that which is set forth in the existing code. So we're not changing sort of the what causes the drought emergency to be triggered. What we are changing is some cleanup language in the beginning about the establishing a specified purpose, and then we've cleaned up the language regarding the findings, and that it's the mayor who makes the findings upon the advice of the water superintendent.
And this came up last summer because we had the drought emergency, and then we realized we weren't even being in conformance with the code, although people abided by it, and we put it on the shelf and said we have to clean this up when time allows.
Yeah. So two things, I think. So my understanding of what we're doing here is just that we, instead of waiting for the city council meeting to be able to enact the drought emergency plan, that the mayor could enact it on the advice of the water superintendent. I imagine there would still be information that comes to the city council when that happens, especially for the public awareness.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the part I was having a hard time, I can't quite figure out what we're trying to say, Nick,
Yep.
is in findings, where we start with the city council of the city of Beacon hereby finds that, blah, blah, blah. Like, that part seemed counter to the goal of what we're trying to do here by making the findings dependent on the city council. But I may just not be following the
Well,
intent.
so the intent of this is in adopting the local law. It's a finding of the city council. It's not the findings that's required when the drought is declared.
Okay.
It was in the adoption of the local law.
Thank you.
So it's the city council is deciding to give some of our authority and power to the mayor that we currently have.
Yes, but also in enacting this law, you're setting forth, and again, this is existing language that we cleaned up, but it's why it says the city council finds, because it's why you're enacting the law and the purpose behind it.
I'm fine with this law. I did have a question if we are, and it makes sense for the purposes of doing this as swiftly as possible. Any thoughts or opinions from you, Chris, or from the mayor, from you, Nick, about what if, God forbid, Lee is on vacation and himself is not available? Should we designate specifically someone in his stead who can make this call, or I don't want us to tie
Then
to
the
this
acting
law?
mayor would be able to do so.
And we don't need to name that
We don't
here
know, because in the
specifically?
mayor's
You
absence,
have
the
an
mayor
acting
can
mayor.
act.
Yeah.
Pam.
And is that saying with the superintendent of water and sewers, that also, if they are away on vacation, that,
It would be his or her designee who's
Okay.
acting in their absence.
okay,
in
so,
their
and again, we
department.
don't need to declare that in this
Correct.
law? Okay,
Correct.
great.
And when the department heads go on vacation, they tell me who's in command of their department while they're gone. So, I would know it's probably going to be Matt Fezza, who's our chief operator.
Yeah, I
and in
could-
terms of the communication, we put this out with our 911 system, our rave call system, put it on the website, put it on social media. We'll let council know. I'm hoping we don't have to invoke it again for a while. It's been nice having rain.
And we do have that in the local law, that it will be required that the city administrator shall announce such restrictions at the soonest available city council meeting, and then provide other notice for the website, access to local news, and give notice otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to kind of say behind my need to kind of make sure it's specific, that I could see a scenario where we implement this and we need to, and it could actually have a direct impact immediately on someone's business or things they wanted to do in the community. So I just don't want to open us up for, oh, there wasn't the right people who actually made this decision, some kind of challenge. But it sounds like we're legally covered there, so that's good to know.
And most of the uses that actually are most impactful are outside uses, like things like washing a driveway, washing your car, watering, and outside certain hours where you're not having it evaporate like in the middle of the day. So again, it wouldn't really curtail critical uses. It's more that first phase of drought emergency usually is just, kind of dial back on your outdoor water use.
Are there any other triggering events that would be I'm just thinking of, is there something that would happen at like the county or the state level that we would need to account for, or is it always based on the reservoir capacity?
In this case, it's specifically on the reservoir capacity. On fire warnings, we do take the state warnings and we translate them locally. I think generally, even if the reservoirs are low, this threshold, I believe, if memory serves, is 60%.
Correct.
We still have been had very good output from our 2 ground wells that we draw a lot of our water from. So even when we're doing this, it's more like proactively trying to conserve water before we get to a point where it's really impacting us.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for clarifying. I just wasn't sure if we needed to add another trigger from some other entity, but it doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, I mean, we have the 3, for people that are tuning in, we have three dams with surface water impoundments, Cargill, Melzinga, and Mount Beacon. We draw Melzinga down in the early part of the year because the water quality gets worse throughout the year there. So if we hit a summer and we're already through Melzinga and then the other dams drop enough, we do start hitting these levels for the first level of drought. And then I believe there's a second level of drought that, and fortunately we haven't hit that during my tenure.
Yeah, and, for comparison, Cold Spring only has reservoir. And so when they declare, it's very different than we declare, because it's the same percentage. When our reservoirs hit 60, then we, do the drought stage.
The wells really give us a lot of backup.
And actually, our tertiary is the creek, and we've never had to do that.
We've now lost that.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, we don't have that approval anymore. But years ago, there was a thought to use Fishkill Creek, and our water filtration plant is located right on the banks of the creek. It could be a future use, but we don't deem that it's needed at this point. We would probably advance a third well in Fishkill before we did that. The groundwater is better protected.
And just for context, these percentages, 60%, 40%, how were those determined, or do we?
Well, we know the capacity of each of the reservoirs. We know how many million gallons are in them, and then based on they measure how far below the top of the dam they are, and they know how to translate that into percentages. So last year, like other people had declared drought emergencies, but we hadn't. We were just edging above the 60%,
Right.
and then we declared it. People, again, had said, "Why did you wait?" And it was because we hadn't gotten to the drop levels.
I think you're answering the question of how do we know when we've gotten to 60%?
Yes.
But I think I'm also asking, how did we decide that 60% was the threshold? Is that based off of our population and how much water they need for a week, or?
I wasn't here. I don't know.
Oh, I thought it was state mandated.
Maybe, I just don't know.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
that was
could
my
be.
I'd be
impression.
guessing, sorry.
I'd be
Oh, I'm-
curious to learn that.
I'm happy to guess.
And then my other thought, which I think is covered, but I just want to say out loud, is that sort of in line with what Molly was saying, that, if this comes out of sequence with a city council meeting, and we as council members start getting questions, is there a way to say, or like require the mayor to report to city council sort of what's happening or what has happened ahead of a council meeting?
When I take any actions like this, when we put in place any designation like that, I do let you know that same day. Because I need you also to help share that information, and
Yeah.
I know that you're going to get calls. So
And I
like when we did the
appreciate-
fire
yeah.
emergency, I think we let you know, like the burn ban that we had
Yeah.
last year.
I guess what I'm saying, I appreciate that you do that in practice, but I'm wondering if it's something that we want to codify or require.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Nick, if we're delegating authority, right, then that authority could come with notice, right?
You can. So on the second line on page 2, we can read, "The city administrator shall provide notice to the city council and announce such restrictions at the soonest available city council meeting."
Well, just for process purposes, can we also have it that the council has to vote still? The mayor can declare it, but the council is briefed upon it and then evaluates whether they want to have it stay in place? Thinking about situations where we might have a chief executive that, you know, we don't want to have all the power all the time. Don't know what's inspiring that thought.
I think that makes sense to me in certain instances, but this one feels pretty cut and dry. Either we're at 60%
Yeah,
or
it's
we're
either
not.
60 or it's not.
Right.
I don't see there being any discretion, so. Right.
Just think, well, what other cases of other types of emergencies? You said fire emergency. Are there other types of emergencies that are declared
General state of emergencies, but that's vested solely in the chief executive officer.
already?
Yes, by state law.
And how do these end? By just the mayor saying it ends as well?
Well, when it reaches the
Goes back.
specified levels of the reservoir, then it goes away. And in practicality, it's being announced that it goes away.
Yeah, last year when we got to certain levels, we made an announcement. Thank you for conserving. We're past that level. The emergency is gone. Please keep conserving, though, again, water's precious.
And local state of emergencies under New York state law are only in effect for 30 days and would have to be reissued every 30 days.
And we had a similar with the burn ban. We had to renew that every few days.
So there's a state of emergency, and that then allows you to modify the law.
Yes.
You issue what are called emergency orders. Those emergency orders, which Chris is referring to, are only good for 5 days and have to be reissued every 5 days.
Still just by the mayor, though.
Yes.
Can it be that the mayor removes the restrictions? The reason why I say that, I keep getting caught on stage 2 and 3, which I know we haven't done. But if we get to a stage 2 drought, if I'm reading this right, the minute that the city of Beacon Pool needs water, they're shutting down, because that's part of the stage 2. And people couldn't even fill their pools, but if it was a 2-week period in this hot summer, and we got a ton of rain on Tuesday after a meeting and filled up our, to 60%, I would hate for the residents to have to wait until that next city council meeting to lift the stage 2 drought to a stage 1. Does that make sense?
So the mayor lifts all of the levels, is my understanding, and we would.
Well, it just has that ability, because if we're in a stage 2, somebody shouldn't be filling their pool. But yet, on Tuesday, we got 6 inches of rain, and it put us to the stage 1 level. But
If we get
technically,
6 inches of rain, we're going to have other concerns.
Well, but
than
you're also no
filling pools.
longer,
well, people just
We're
got
going to
it.
not have roads.
Tannersville got 6 inches the other day, so it's in
Yeah.
one day, so it does happen. I'm just thinking, like, we're doing this. Is there a way that it could be lifted so that 13 days before we have a city council meeting, because we only meet every other week in the summer, or even any time, we only vote every other week, and if it happens to be
There's no
fourth-
vote to lift the ban,
Right.
though.
there's no vote to lift it.
No,
No, it's-
we promptly lifted it when it crossed the 60% threshold last time.
I was going to
So
say,
the
it's
mayor puts it
self-effectuating.
in. Huh?
It's self-effectuating, because when you get to 60%,
Yeah,
it's no longer
and then we
in
just
effect.
announced it's no longer in effect.
But if we're at a stage 2, would we just say we're not a stage 1?
Yeah, we certainly.
Okay, I guess that's the question.
Yeah,
if
we would
just
update it. I mean, we want people to have the most accurate information at that time.
So the lifting it doesn't need action, it's just doing the initial.
We generally
the
just
action.
announce the lifting of the ban.
Okay.
Is it this sentence, like 5 lines down on page 2, and shall remain in place until otherwise terminated by the mayor with the advice of the superintendent? Does it need to more clearly say otherwise, like terminated or restaged, or whatever the correct
Right,
terminology?
because it does affect determination. It doesn't affect about it going from stage 2 to stage 1 or
Right,
stage.
right. Or terminated or change in stage level?
Yeah,
Yeah, we can add that.
I can make that edit, yes.
Does that like more
That-
clearly say what you
That
wanted?
helps, yeah, because it's not, you're not going to go from stage 3 or 2 to we've lifted it. I mean, that wouldn't be possible, but it could be to a stage 3 to a stage 2 or 2 to 1. And looking at it, that does affect people's quality of life in saving water. And if it can be, if we have abundance.
Okay, we'll present you with a revised version, but if you're comfortable going forward with those edits as you discussed at your meeting on Monday, you can set a public hearing for this local law.
I'm comfortable proceeding with the edits as discussed.
Same.
Okay.
Can I just ask, what is the one, I'm assuming it's a water well that isn't owned or operated by the city?
Yeah, it's
So we have 2 wells in Fishkill that we own and operate, and then we purchase water from the village of Fishkill. And that's required under our safe yield requirements. We have to show we have X amount of water to be able to, and our usage is well below that. I think we use about 2.5 million gallons a day, and our safe yield is 4 million gallons a day. So we want to have backups, because sometimes the wells can go down. In the years I've been here, we did have a well go down, and we had to replace that. And then we're also trying to rehabilitate one of the wells at one point.
Thank you.
okay.
Yes.
All right, one down. Here's an exciting one. So it's a proposed local law. It's a change to the loitering law. And Nick, you're going to tell us about this.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. So this amends Chapter 145. So cannabis use, and marijuana use was decriminalized in New York. It's treated the same as tobacco. So if you're allowed to smoke tobacco on the sidewalks, you can smoke marijuana or cannabis there as well. The city code provides that if you're using marijuana in a public place, you can be deemed to be loitering. So this would clean that up to be consistent with New York state law, because our local code can't preempt or vary from what the state requires. So that would be removed. The city can still, of course, on property it owns, such as parks and places like that, prohibit tobacco and other uses, which it has done so. So this is just another example of the cleanup language.
Yeah, that was my main question, was to clarify that our city law about smoking in public spaces is confined to city buildings and parks, but not other public spaces.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right, you can
Yes.
toke away.
Now we're
right.
getting into the weeds.
You've been saving that one.
Did you workshop that?
You're getting in the weeds or something like that.
What, we had dry
We're
humor a
cutting your
moment ago.
mic next week if you continue this.
But Chris, we just had dry humor.
Somebody stop him.
You should hear the attorney calls that are weekly.
I have to suffer through this twice a week.
All right, there are budget amendments. You going to take us through those, Chris? or-
Yes.
Okay.
So we have 2 budget amendments for your consideration tonight. The first amends the general fund, the highway budget. We had put into contingency retirement funds, anticipating that our head mechanic, who has been with us for almost 30 years, was retiring in January. This payout is for accrued sick time, personal time, and vacation. So we are proposing to transfer $75,409 from contingency retirement to the severance retirement pay. The second one is related to all three funds, general, sewer, and water, and it's to pay for the cost of living increases that you approved back in November for CSEA. And those increases were also given to the administrative staff that are not in the union. We had put in contingency. We knew by that point really what the raises were going to be, and so we put that money into contingency. You actually adopted both the budget and the CSEA contract the same night. So this is just doing a cleanup to transfer $198,240 from the general fund contingency to the general fund appropriate salary and payroll tax lines. The F line is the water fund, so it would transfer $50,364 from contingency to payroll. And then the last fund, the G fund, is the sewer fund, and that would transfer $39,863 to the appropriate payroll lines. You had asked last year for contingency funding tracking, so I can give you that. We have two contingency funds. So in the First Amendment, that is a specific contingency for retirement. We had $124,000 in that. This would lower that by $75,409, leaving a balance of $48,591. We don't expect any other retirements this year. So there sometimes are payouts when people leave, but they don't accrue anything like somebody who's been with us 29 years. On the second amendment you're considering, the general fund would be decreased from the $250,000 that you budgeted to $51,760. The water fund had $52,000 in contingency, and it will be lowered to $1,636. And then the sewer fund would go from $65,000 to $25,137. We don't think there's an issue there. We don't see a lot coming on these lines, and that money was mainly put into contingency for those raises. And we don't put that in the budget because we hadn't finished the negotiation. And again, I wouldn't put it in and then it gets voted down by the union or by us.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. The next workshop, the one after the Memorial Day, the 27th.
It's the 27th. We'll be presenting the capital program. So one of the reasons this is late tonight is we've been working on putting that together, meeting with the department heads. Susan and I are meeting with the mayor to try to finalize that on Friday to bring you a draft program.
Yep, so we weren't quite ready for that. That meeting I will be remote, but that's the one we'll go through the capital plan.
And Susan Tucker, our finance director, will be here to walk through it.
She's the one who's relevant, not me. So, okay.
We have an executive session.
Yeah, and so I'll take a motion to go into executive session regarding real property, to conduct no further business, and then to adjourn.
Motion to go into executive session for real property and do no further public business thereafter and adjourn.
That's
Second.
motion by Molly, second by Amber. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
And Ben and Owen, thank you. We're good tonight. We just need the people in the room.
Hey, Boone.
Rec-
Jeff?